Hi, I'm Sam DuRegger with Begin the Work. Today I'm going to go through a quick presentation on innovation strategy. Now I'm pulling a lot from Safi Bahcall's book, Loonshots. Really good book, pretty thick, a lot of case studies. Make sure you go pick it up and go through it. Today's presentation is going to be a rebound of what I learned from the book. Some of it is from the book and some of it is from my head. And so hopefully you'll enjoy. Now, as we think about innovation strategy, I think a lot about how we look at the culture of innovation, how that organization supports innovation, whether it's a startup or a corporate setting. I think one thing that I really took from this book that is really straight from the chapters is separating the phases. We really need two teams with two distinct functions. Separate the soldiers from the artists is how Safi Bahcall places it. We really need to think about having an innovation group and an operation group. The second main thing is fail forward fast. Really, innovation needs failure to succeed. Fail in the micro, success in the macro. And really, as we think about failing forward fast, we know that operations cannot fail because that's your revenue driver. And then the last thing is creating a dynamic equilibrium. Manage the delicate transfer between the phases. You got to love your artists and soldiers equally, but they aren't equal. You need mature teams to understand each other's strengths. Now, separating the phases, let's look at this first group. We've got an innovation group and an operations group. And a lot of times you have everybody in the same room working on different projects. You've got one group working on innovation, one group working on operations. Sometimes they switch back and forth. The first thing that Safi Bahcall talks about is really separating the phases. Creating a place where you have an innovation team and an operations team so that we can begin treating them equally in the way they operate. Because an innovation group has to be measured differently than the operations group. And we'll go into that in a minute. Here's some of the detail. And we want to create separate groups for innovators and operators. We need to tailor our management tools to each of the phases. Really, innovation groups need wide management spans and loose control, qualitative metrics on how we measure them. An operations group, we need narrow management spans, tight controls, and quantitative metrics. Innovation also needs a place to do big bets and smaller plays. So the iterative approach of small changes that can make a tremendous impact in the aggregate. And then also looking at big moonshots, big bets, investments with a long-term vision that can really change the world. And as we look at the next phase of fail forward fast, I think the innovation group has to understand that it needs failure to succeed. It needs to have high curiosity. Why did we fail? Why did it fail? We need to have empowered exploration and really retrospectives to drive learning. They need to be able to ask the question why and get answers to that question. And then from a building standpoint, the innovation group needs to have agility. Begin, begun, begin again. That is the mantra of Begin the Work. With that comes the agreed upon agile framework and process. Every agile process is going to be different no matter where you are, whether you're in a corporate setting or a startup. You got to decide, what are we tackling? How are we tackling it? Who do we have to tackle this project? And then creating the framework and process around those people. We also need trust and a one-team mindset. As we're going through things, failure can get frustrating. And if we have trust with one another, there's nobody pointing the finger. We're all learning from each other's mistakes. And in this process, the innovation group is really going to be reliant on product management to manage the progress. Because in innovation, we're thinking about progress over process. Then in the operations group on their side, failure has major consequences. We mitigate risk by implementing process. We copy competition because it's defendable. We outsource delivery because we then have a scapegoat. We can find another delivery partner. There's waterfall development, plan, build, deliver, test, then launch. Consensus is more important than collaboration, and project managers to manage the process over progress. And I think if you hear my tone, I want to make sure we hear that I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm saying we have to understand the differences between innovation and operations so that we can both have success in what we're trying to do. The last thing is creating a dynamic equilibrium. Really, as the innovation group comes up with different things, they have to have a way to pass that to the operations group. And that management of transferring that knowledge is really important. Again, artists and soldiers. If the artist comes to operations and say, here's a concept, here's an innovation, and the soldiers just continually dog on it or are talking down to it, then we're never going to win. We're never going to get something off the ground into operations. So there has to be a management of both innovation and operations to come together and see what is applicable to the larger scale operations, and being able to find those wins, implement those wins so everyone is happy. And again, like, the whole point of this is the strength of operations is execution at scale, whereas the strength of innovation is execution at speed. So as we're looking at operations and innovations, again, it's not a one or the other. It is, how do we manage both in a way that brings success to the organization, to our projects, and to our overarching goal and vision as an organization, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. And the last thing I'll leave you with is the most important part of any team, whether we're talking about innovation or operations or the working between both, is really the ability for that team to leave our ego at the door. It's one of my mantras that I use all the time. In order for us to go from a hero mindset to a team mindset, we have to leave our ego at the door, and we have to be able to not only talk about our failures, be curious on why we failed, and then have a high implementation of our learning. Once again, I'm Sam DuRegger with Begin the Work. Thanks for checking out Innovation Strategy. Look for more at beginthework.com.